Dark Days, Chatting with Baldwin. I never could read James Baldwin. I just could not. I would buy his book, but then I could not get past page 1 and would end up giving it away or losing it, probably deliberately. Or I would see a book of his with someone else, borrow it, but would return it soon enough, unread, probably unopened. So when I saw Dark Days in a small bookshop not too far from where I live, I picked it up. 50 pages. Small. Light. I could read this in one sitting. I could force myself to finish it, even if I didn't like it. How much? Reasonable, though I could probably get it cheaper secondhand if I could find it. I paid for it. Put it in my bag, home. That night, I picked it up and I was hooked from the first page. As I read, I had questions. Sometimes I did not understand a statement or a phrase. For example, I learned to sing out of hard experience. So I would note it and continue reading. Later, Baldwin would either explain it or it would come to make sense as he wrote and I read. I annotated like crazy throughout the book. I used a green gel pen which stood out boldly and clearly. Then I went back and read my annotations and I annotated some more. I ran out of space on many pages. Then, when I wanted to write my notes, I reread the book, expanded my annotations, and typed extensive notes. Those notes became this essay. Dark Days changed me in a good way. I can see more clearly now that I have read Dark Days and now that I have been introduced to James Baldwin through it. I have a deeper level of understanding and appreciation for life. But not just my life. I have more empathy for other people's stories, even though those stories may not be my own. I can relate. But I also can extrapolate from other people's stories and pick universal themes and elements that are applicable to my story and those around me. Dark Days showed me this. And this is what reading should do. A good book, like a piece of good art, should have an impact. Dark Days is a personal reflection and narration of Baldwin's life from around age 7 to nearly 60. It is a short account, as he picks only certain elements he wants to highlight, events and people that stood out, had an impact, and molded him. It is less a coming-of-age story than it is a story about coming out of darkness, or trying to make sense of darkness, even if you may not be able to fully emerge from it. Dark Days is an essay in the collection of the same name. The essay, Dark Days, is only about 25 pages, even though the collection is about 50 pages. There are 2 other essays in the collection. Although Baldwin is describing the Black experience in America, reading the essay, I could relate and apply his observations to life here in Nigeria. Dark Days touches on state power, family and friends, community, education, civilization, history, existentialism, of course, survival, love, and hope. Baldwin notes that the Black person in America should never accept the description they are given because, first, it is not true, and second, it is deliberately crafted to keep them down while keeping the one who crafted the description up. This is also true of Nigeria with its history of colonization and its colonizers, even to this day. But it is also true within the nation, where peoples are described in a certain way for political reasons. When tribes are described as being antagonistic towards each other, more to prevent any unity from growing between them than for other reasons. This may not be true at all. We can drill this all the way down to family, friends, and all relationships
where one is described as unhelpful, stubborn, or even praised for being intelligent, and then gaslighted or ghosted, all in an effort to manipulate them to get desired results. This gaslighting situation is applicable to any persons who have been manipulated, judged to be less for any reason, and relegated. But the greater point is that it is applicable where and when there is state capture for money and power, and where different sets of people are used as chess pieces with different positions and ranks, but all still being used. This occurs at the state level, institution or organization level, at the community level, and within the family. In fact, I would argue that it is more common than we realize, and that every single one of us is or has been a victim, whether we are part of the state or on the side of the people. Sometimes we are one, and other times we are the other. Either way, we are all affected. Now imagine if your very existence is a battlefield, or a seemingly endless series of battlefields, and the easier way out is to pretend to be someone and something you are not, while the hardest way, and not necessarily one that guarantees success, is to try and be who the other wants you to be. Haven't you manipulated? For your own gain? We all have. At any point in time, it is more a matter of who is doing it best and for how long.
Baldwin notes the state's complicity in keeping the Black man down. Again, I believe this is true anywhere there is a play for power, and it is true in Nigeria, albeit in a different way. Nigeria is a made-up country of very different ethnicities and people, all vying for their own identity and agency. However, some people may seem to be more advanced than others, and this causes even more friction between the people. I believe politicians take advantage of these frictions and even exacerbate them. There are also socioeconomic differences, which the state then uses charitable programs to alleviate, charitable programs that do not necessarily get to those in need. But these charitable programs, without a clear structure and purpose of helping one in need for a defined period, all with the aim of getting them on their feet, actually do more harm than good. It robs the beneficiaries of their dignity by taking away their agency. It also robs the seeming benefactors, the state and the middlemen contracted to disburse the benefits, of some dignity by putting them in a position of being responsible for individuals who should have their own agency. And the benefits can be corrupted and co-opted, as we saw during the endsars movement in Nigeria in October 2020. Sometimes people are allowed to starve and are driven to death for the sake of money, power, and greed. Beyond the state, personal charity programs where family, friends, and associates reach out for help more often than not also end up having the same negative effects from the loss of their agency. The benefactors, too. Anything that takes away or suspends one's agency, that profound right of making one's own decisions about how you live your life and how you survive, including actually doing it yourself, ends up making you dependent and therefore erodes your dignity. When Baldwin says human help comes at a human price, this sums it up quite well. Wouldn't you agree? We are taught what we know, but we are never taught what we do not know. That we learn all by ourselves. Baldwin describes education as being of two types. So also civilization. He says that education with a small e occurs when we are taught and raised by our immediate family and friends, starting with our primary caregiver. Then education with a capital E is what is provided by the state through schools and institutions. He goes on to say that education occurs in a context and with a very definite purpose. So when the Nigerian education system is directly taken from the British education system, it means that while the context may have changed, the purpose is still the same. And we would be hard-pressed to find anyone, any politician, or any state say a negative statement against themselves. I ask you, how can we, as a nation, grow if the system we are growing with works against us or works for another? As Baldwin says, although one cannot really be educated to believe a lie, one can be forced to surrender to it. Baldwin talks about how, despite the obvious hardship, he and his siblings were lucky growing up because they did not have the television showing them every day what others had and what they did not, and probably would never have. Today, beyond television, we have streaming services like Netflix and YouTube and social media. The difference is that these avenues are somewhat semi-independent in that everyone is now a potential creator and producer of their own story and has a platform to broadcast it to the world. This is different from when we had only a few channels on television, which were more or less controlled by the state. I say semi-independent because the streaming services are controlled by algorithms which decide what we see based on our past viewing preferences, but created by the owners of the platforms. They inevitably decide what we see and what we do not see. The question becomes, how aware are those who watch this content enough to know what to believe and what not to believe?
Dark Days is a love story. This might be hard to agree with or accept, but it is. Let me explain. In Dark Days, you can tell that underlying all that Baldwin says about the Black experience, the white experience, America, and the state is a profound love and an anguished cry for a nation you see, but that does not see you. One that he wants to see him in all his glory. It starts with a love for oneself, a love for who you can be and who you should be. Baldwin says that a child can tell when he is loved, when the hand scolding him or her does it out of genuine love for the child or not. This implies that Baldwin believes that a child is born with love and that he must have learned that love from somewhere beyond this world, but that love has to be reinforced when we get to this world. This love is transcendental. We are all born with love, and it is that same love we want to experience in this world. However, being able to know that that is what one desires is key. That is, we need to know and understand what love is. It doesn't help if we search all over and we still do not know what we are looking for. This is the plight of many of us even in Nigeria. But it comes down to us. We need to know ourselves. Baldwin believed that in all our outwitting through our lives, we soon come to realize that there is no one to outwit but oneself. In reading Dark Days, one can look at it and say, this state is teaching its people to hate. Whenever a state promotes any kind of violence between people, even if it is between the armed forces and the people or between peoples, it is promoting hate. The church and the mosque and other religious institutions should be teaching love. It is a love story because Baldwin is looking at the world from the beginning, when one is a child, expecting this world that brought him or her into it to also take the responsibility of taking care of him or her. He notes that every child's sense of himself is terrifyingly fragile and that bullies are created by adults who abandoned, gave up on, or did not spend the time and the care required to nurture the child. So if the state or the people are not careful to love the child may learn to hate.
Baldwin touches on family, especially the role of the Black man within the state and within the immediate family structure. The traditional view is that a man is supposed to take care of his family, to provide for and to protect his family. Obviously, to do that, he has to work and earn money. The more equipped he is, the more he can potentially earn. But a man also needs to feel appreciated. He needs to feel seen and he wants to be respected. And if the state does not do that for him, but rather works to keep him down, he turns to his immediate family to get it. Because after all, they are the ones he is doing all of it for.
But when times start to change and the socioeconomic order changes, when little freedoms start to be granted to append things, sometimes quite deliberately, what is the traditional Black American man left with? In Nigeria, as the socioeconomic order changes and times become more challenging and women start to earn more, men may feel threatened and start to lose their way, to question their identity and their purpose. This can be very devastating for any man who does not have help or support. When the position you hold is tenable due to some benefaction of a relationship, you do almost anything to retain it, and this can lead to some questionable choices and decisions which can end up taking that position away anyway. The truth is, just as Black people in America needed and need help, so do white people in America, and so do all people everywhere. The help needed may be different for different people, but we need it just the same. We are all born with absolutely nothing, and so are dependent on the world we find ourselves in and the people we find ourselves with, at least in the beginning.
Limiting Baldwin's dark days to just America will do it a terrible injustice. Even though when the author wrote it, I am sure that was his purpose. But for us who did not have the same experience he speaks of, but who have similar experiences so that we can relate, it is very helpful to read Dark Days and apply it to our context to help us understand our experiences better so we can navigate them to become more successful. Wherever we can learn our lessons, we should. We should not wait to make all the mistakes ourselves, as that will be a waste of time and resources. As I said at the beginning, reading Dark Days changed me because it helped me understand my world better, and it also gave me the words and the voice to articulate the experiences around me. James Baldwin did not go to college. He only had a high school education and grew up in a Christian family with a preacher father. And he grew up in decidedly hard times and circumstances. Yet, through keen observation and deep contemplation, he was able to understand and articulate the Black experience so perceptively and with such eloquence. This may be what he meant when he said, I learned how to sing out of hard experience. He learned to write beautifully from the trials and tribulations he endured. Beauty for ashes. Reading Baldwin, I am struck by how poetic his prose is, and I am taking lessons. I now want to read all his books, not just for the life lessons, but also to learn to articulate my own experiences and observations. Baldwin has taught me to read better, but also to write better. Thank you, Mr. Baldwin.